Wow, that was severe. So let's talk about Ebonics. Ebonics comes from the root words ebony and phonics. It's actually a blended word, say like bromance. You know, brother plus romance. Get it? Good. Now back to Ebonics. Like I said, Ebonics is a blended word that comes from ebony and phonics. Ebony meaning black, and phonics meaning the study of how the sounds of words are represented by spelling. So, in essence, Ebonics is black sounding words and spellings? What? Here's the definition from our book. Ebonics is a social dialect of North American English that is spoken by a large population of Americans from African descent. This dialect and those who speak it are often thought of as deficient, illogical, and incomplete. Some have even gone so far as to say that Ebonics is a result of inferior genetic intelligence and cultural deprivation. I don't know about that, but before we give it a further look, let's review some of the other names you might know Ebonics by. Let's see, there's African American English, African American Vernacular English, Black English, and Inner City English. So they would have us to believe that black people and any other race of people born within the city limits all say fo instead of for and befo instead of before, and they all say Ruth instead of Ruth, or I don't know instead of I don't know. Well, I grew up in Atlanta and I don't speak like that. Do I? Nope. I think we are already beginning to see some holes in this logic. Anyhow, now that we know what they think, let's examine what other groups think. Here are the results of a survey given to 100 African Americans that grew up in the inner city and 100 non-African Americans. Not very useful, huh? Well, let's take a closer look. First, I asked a simple question. Do you know what Ebonics is? 90% of non-African Americans said yes, while 96% of the African Americans responded yes. When asked to give a brief definition of Ebonics, the most common responses by non-African Americans were a dialect of standard American English, slang used by African Americans, unintelligent talk of African Americans, and a shortcut of speech used by African Americans. When asked the same question, African Americans commonly responded by saying that it is slang, a way for people to be cool by being hood or ghetto, and a dialect or broken English. It is important to note here that while many of the African American respondents said that Ebonics is used by other races, only 8% of non-African American respondents verbalized that here. These results are not at all surprising to me, but the next charts tell a different story. When asked if they speak Ebonics, non-African American respondents gave a resounding no at 73%, while 23% said they rarely use Ebonics. African American respondents' answers were a little less polarized, with 16% saying no, they don't speak Ebonics, 64% of them saying they rarely speak Ebonics, and 20% saying yes, they do speak Ebonics. I think we are starting to see a trend here, but let's keep looking. Next, I wanted to see how people perceive their friends' and families' use of Ebonics. Non-African American respondents felt that 43% of their friends do not speak Ebonics, and 43% do use Ebonics sometimes, and 70% of their family members do not speak Ebonics, and 11% of the respondents said that no one in their family speaks Ebonics. On the contrary, when asked the same question, African American respondents' comparisons were more evenly matched, with 52% of their friends and 65% of their family members speaking Ebonics sometimes, 28% of their friends and 25% of their family members speaking Ebonics, and 16% of their friends and 12.5% of their family members not speaking Ebonics at all. This is very fascinating indeed. But what are the implications of this? Let's look at the next question, shall we? When asked if Ebonics was a way people chose to speak in spite of what they may have been taught, or if it was just a part of African American culture, I was personally shocked by what was reported. 82% of non-African Americans thought Ebonics was a choice, while 12% thought it was just part of African American culture, and 6% gave other responses. 68% of African American respondents thought that speaking Ebonics was a choice, while 32% still believe that Ebonics is a part of African American culture. What we see here is that although these numbers are not equal, both groups have a majority believing that speaking Ebonics is a choice. So if we are to believe Ebonics is a chosen form of communication, what exactly does speaking Ebonics communicate? 31% of non-African Americans polled thought that people who speak Ebonics are unintelligent. 10% thought that Ebonics is just the way African Americans speak. 27% responded other, while thankfully the majority at 41% said that how a person speaks has no bearing on what they thought of them. Disappointingly, though, no one responded that a person who speaks Ebonics is intelligent. This is not to say that there are not intelligent people who speak Ebonics. As a matter of fact, let's take Plies for example. Plies is a rapper and certified goon, but was also the valedictorian of his high school class and has a nursing degree. He just simply chose to use Ebonics to further his position in life. The point here, don't judge a book by its cover. Or is it, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. Ponder that as I continue. Both groups did agree that there are times and places where Ebonics is not appropriate. Those times included, but are not limited to, work, school, in writing, unless that is the stylistic effect, an interview, church, and with your family. There were some in both groups who said that it is never appropriate to speak Ebonics. The only qualm I have with the latter statement is that does this exclusion apply to all dialects, slangs, or deviations from standard English? Just a thought. Oh, I should note here that there was one African American respondent that said there are no times when they do not use Ebonics. And now for the important stuff. I was the most surprised by the respondents' thoughts on whether or not Ebonics should be taught and or accepted in its spoken or written form in the classroom. 99% of African American respondents thought that Ebonics had no place in the classroom, citing such reasons as it's simply illogical to teach someone to say stow instead of store, among others. On the other hand, non-African American respondents were split almost down the middle, giving reasons such as it depends on the school and the environment, and it's not a language, it's slang. So what have we learned here today? Perception is key, and sometimes how we perceive ourselves and others is totally different from how others perceive themselves. I personally think that nobody is perfect. Standard American English isn't perfect, and nobody really speaks it anyway. With that said, I do think that unless you are the king of the world, or at least CEO of your own business, you should try to put your best foot forward. Sometimes that may involve speaking Ebonics, but most times it won't. So until then, you might want to brush up on your code switching. I'd go into that, but it might take another presentation for that.